Hey everybody, welcome back to How to Become a Freelancer in 30 Days. This is Anthony Chatfield. And for day 14, we're going to talk about some stuff to think about long term. This is again, back to the boring stuff. As you can see, I'm breaking this up a little bit to make it a little easier to handle. We're going to talk about taxes and legal issues and running a business. And I'll give you the same disclaimer I gave you last time. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant. This is just personal experience and some stuff that I've had to deal with, and a few things that you should start thinking about now. So goals for today, determine how you're going to pay your bills and what those bills are and how to track them. Determine what contracts or forms you will use to protect yourself, if you haven't yet. And then what tax concerns you need to worry about when you get started. Other resources you might have to worry about, such as healthcare, especially if you're in the United States. Here's my American disclaimer once more. I'm in the United States. My experience is 100% with U.S. tax and legal. Every country's different, so if you're in Canada or the U.K. or anywhere in Europe, this stuff's going to be different for you. Even though everything else about this program will be roughly the same, these things are going to be different. And this video is probably not the most useful for you, but they might also be things you want to think about. Even in the U.S., though, every state is a little different. I've lived in Washington and New York. Those are only the two states I've dealt with in terms of those issues. So make sure you look this stuff up for your local area as well. And then bottom line, always talk to an accountant first. Don't listen to me for any of this stuff. This is things to think about, questions to take to your accountant, not necessarily bottom line advice on it. All right. Stuff you're going to need to do, though, some of the stuff you want to take to your accountant and think about. Business ownership. We've talked about this a little bit. Liability and protection against lawsuits. That's part of business ownership. How taxes normally work, and then how they now work for you. This is pretty significant. Freelancing in the United States is considered self-employment, and you're going to have to pay a self-employment tax. Now, the reason for this, because at first that sounds horrible, the reason for this is that normally your employer, if you have a full-time job, pays half of your Social Security and your Medicare taxes. When you're self-employed, you pay all of it. So instead of paying the 50% you currently pay, and what they take out of your paycheck is only half, your employer is paying the other half, you pay all of it. So you're paying a little bit more in taxes when you pay at the end of the year. So you have to plan in advance. At the same time, you are not... you don't have a paycheck. So there's nobody taking money out of your check every week or every 2 weeks to make sure that the government's getting theirs. So if you don't make quarterly payments or set money aside in advance, at the end of the year, you're going to owe a pretty big chunk of money, which has come back to bite me a couple times. So it's something you want to think about now before you even start to make money, so you can start setting aside that cash. And then finally, there's the healthcare factor. Another major thing here in the United States, you have to have healthcare to some degree. There's penalties if you don't. There are private marketplaces. It varies so much by which state you live in, so I highly recommend you look this up locally, but it's just something to think about. So if you're used to having insurance through your job and you're considering doing freelancing and quitting your job someday, that's another expense you'll have to look into when you do that. Business structure and tax. So these are the 4 different types of businesses that you can create in general, the United States. An LLC, partnership, sole proprietorship, and corporation. In terms of tax difference, there's a lot of differences here. The bottom line is that you want to protect yourself against any legal issues. Any of these except for sole proprietorship will do that for you. And LLCs and partnerships make taxes relatively easy too. You don't get double taxed for anything. Corporations are generally not a good fit for like a 1 or 2 person business. So I wouldn't necessarily look at that unless you want to, depending on where you live, if there's a benefit to it. Again, talk to your accountant. They will walk you through which of these makes the most sense. But the bottom line is that it's important you do one of them because you're going to need it long term for asset protection and liability protection, all that stuff. And then expensing and reporting. The government wants you to pay quarterly payments for estimated taxes. This is the IRS. You don't have to do it. I say that in a very funny voice, obviously, because you do have to do it. If you don't do it, they charge you a penalty. It's a very small penalty, but nobody comes knocking on your door. The reason you really should do it, though, despite the penalty, because why would you pay penalties when you don't have to, is that at the end of the year, if you haven't done it, you owe a lot of money to the government. So it's a good idea to keep track of what you're making, set aside whatever you think it's going to be. Depending on how much money you're making, again, talk to your accountant. They can give you an estimate on how much you should set aside percentage-wise. So keep in mind it'll be a little bit more than normal because of that self-employment bit. And then in counting, to ensure you have all the paperwork needed, keep everything. I don't know. That's the easiest advice I can give you. Whatever it is, keep it. When I ran my business, almost everything was done online. So I got digital invoices for everything, and it just dropped everything into Evernote and FreshBooks. It was easy. It was all there. I would export it at the end of the year, give it to the accountant. He'd take care of it. Done. All right. The other important thing here, though, is to try to do bookkeeping and invoicing over the course of the year. Don't try to catch up at the end. Even if you don't have a lot of contracts, this can get really cumbersome if you wait too long. And then contracts and legal counsel, anything money related, anything, tax related, you want to go through an accountant and then ask your accountant for good, legal advice for when those things come up. You're going to want to talk to your accountant and a lawyer when you create a business. So all this stuff is important and time consuming and a little mind numbing up front, but once you've done it, you don't really have to do it again, and you'll be done and protected and everything will be easy. Now the cool part is you don't really need to do this. There's no legal requirement to do any of this right away. It's just good best practice to get it done so you have it done and out of the way. So for next steps, what I would recommend, decide how you want to report your income. So, whether it's waiting till the end of the year if you don't think you're going to do very much freelancing, or setting aside all of that money and just having the taxes paid quarterly. Talk to your accountant, figure out how you want to handle it. Set up a system to record and track income, expenses, and tax liability. If you're using FreshBooks, it will help you do this. If you're going to do a lot of work, you might want to get something like QuickBooks. There are a few other pretty decent pieces of software out there that are a little easier to use for small business owners if you don't need the power of QuickBooks. And then set times to record and invoice every week, month, and quarter, just to make sure everything's caught up all the time. And really, honestly, the first step in all of this is to find and talk to an accountant. So most of them will give you a free consultation where you just go in and they'll answer questions and help you figure out what you want to do. If you actually need them to do something, like your bookkeeping or your quarterly taxes, they're going to charge you for that. But just helping you figure out some of these questions, a halfway decent accountant will just help you figure that stuff out. All right, so that's everything for today. Again, accountant, talk to an accountant. I'm not an accountant. But just some of the things that I've dealt with in the past. As a freelancer, this all gets much more complicated if you want to start an agency or do something more, robust. So this only applies to my time as a freelancer, a few years ago. And again, in the United States, in the states of Washington and New York. So this is very broad strokes, stuff to think about, but it is important to think about it. So I would start doing so now. All right. So any questions or comments, leave them below. If you would like to learn any more about anything we've been talking about, please shoot me an email or a message and let me know. I'm always looking for things I can build out and add new content on, whether it's to this program or to a new program. I'm 100% game for it. Just let me know what you're interested in seeing. And if you haven't yet, leave a quick review and let me know what you think. Love your feedback. All right, so that's everything for today. I will talk to you tomorrow.